welcome along to I Know What You Watched Last Week, Part 8, Karen Takes Manhattan.
Yeah, so...
Confused you already, haven't I?
Yeah, I feel like I should know this. I feel like we might have watched this. It's one of those sequel things to one of the big ones. Anyway, let's get on to this because I'm very excited to talk about these 3 films that we watched. I thoroughly enjoyed watching every single one of them.
And what were those films?
So in order, we started with a Hungarian, I thought it was Polish, but Hungarian film, dubbed, and we watched it on Amazon streaming or something under the title Primal.
Yeah, this movie has 3 English names.
And it looked quite like a horror from the cover art and title. Then it's also, on IMDb, it's known as Well.
Yep.
And the original Hungarian name is...
K-U-T. So just called it Cut.
With some accent on it as well.
Yeah, on the U.
I don't speak Hungarian, so I have no idea how that's pronounced. But yeah, so it's got a few names. The next one we watched was Prom Night 3. The Last Kiss?
Prom Night 3, The Last Kiss.
The Last Kiss. Yep. I was about to say something else, but I'll just move straight on to the last one, which, even though I loved it, you had to keep reminding me what it was. It was the most recent one we saw, but...
Your mind couldn't take this movie.
I couldn't take it. Maybe, again, it doesn't really strike me as horror, so I keep forgetting, but...
it's a suspense movie.
The Fanatic.
Starring John Travolta.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, in order, least favourite to favourite.
It's a really hard one again. I enjoy different things about them, but I think I have had enough time to decide how I'm going to rank them, and unfortunately I am putting Coot
Okay, Primal.
in 3rd place, then Prom Night 3, and The Fanatic.
Fanatic is your number 1.
Blew my little mind.
Yeah. I'm going to go Primal in 3rd. And I've got it the other way. I've got Fanatic at number 2 and Prom Night 3.
Yeah, when
Clearly
we
at
were
number
watching
1.
Prom Night 3, you were loving it more than I did. You were just laughing constantly, especially towards the end. So I knew that was going to be your top choice.
I literally said when the credits started to roll that we might as well just give it the number 1 now.
Yeah, and you at one point during The Fanatic were like, oh, this is so crap or something, and I was like, what? I'm loving it. So
Well, crap is among many things that it can pass off as.
I can't wait to get into that one.
So let's get into Primal, the least favourite.
Yeah, which the absolute first thing that just slaps the viewer in the face when you watch the version that we watched is the dubbing.
The dubbing is horrible.
The voices.
I didn't know it was going to be dubbed going in. I just assumed we were going to get subtitles.
Yeah.
Which I would have been fine with.
That would have been much better, to be honest.
Because have you ever seen a good dubbing of a movie?
Certainly better than that was done. That might be the worst. I always joke, I'm half German, and I always joke that in Germany when you get American films with the German dubbing, they use the same sort of 2 or 3 actors for every single character, so you don't get much difference, but at least they're doing some acting.
I don't know where they found these people for Primal.
It was like they just picked up like someone off in an office who happened to be able to speak English and was just reading the words with no emotion, no correlation with what's actually happening on the screen.
It made it impossible to take this movie seriously. I feel like in Hungarian it might be a half decent movie possibly, but I can't really tell because the dubbing just completely changes it from what it should be. Because
even despite the dubbing, I do remember that I enjoyed some of the performances. I thought they were really believable.
I don't know, there's a lot of unbelievable stuff in this as well.
It's just bizarre, and again, I don't know if that's something that's lost in translation or if it's just one of those weird movies.
I was going to give him the benefit of the doubt, but let's call him the protagonist, the guy that works at the gas station who just sits outside, and certainly he narrates the movie essentially, and he keeps having scenes where he's picking up from part of a story which is already began to tell at the beginning of the movie. It's about a dog, and it's delivered in a way which is like a melodramatic, overdramatic something like this. Like, so there'll be a random scene, all of a sudden he'll start talking about his little dog story from back in the past, and it's just supposed to lead somewhere. And once you get to the end of his story, an hour and a half later, when he finally finishes telling it to a prostitute, it was all completely worthless.
Well,
And
yeah.
he was the worst dubbed guy I've ever seen in my life.
It was terrible.
Yeah.
It was that, but that's one of the things I enjoyed about it
Like I say,
was the
I
dubbing was so bad that it was hilarious.
With the dubbing, like I say, I was going to give this movie the benefit of the doubt and say I feel like possibly in its native language it might be okay, but there were certain scenes that were
There's
just...
so many questions. For one thing,
Yeah.
it starts with the mum of this grown-ass man dropping him off at his long-lost dad's place, who's, you know, a wrong 'un or something, and being like, here's our kid, I can't get a handle on him, you take him over. And the dad's like, oh, I haven't got the life, I can't take care of a child. And I was like, the whole time I'm thinking, why are they talking about this 30-year-old man like he's 5 years old?
Yeah, that bit kind of... I don't even remember that bit, because there's other things that
It's the whole
left
reason
an
he's
imprint in my
at the
mind.
gas station in the first place.
It's kind of irrelevant as to why he's at the gas station, really, though, isn't it? Because it doesn't really have anything to do with the story. It's more... What more struck me was when the 4 prostitutes arrive at this gas station with their hunchbacked pimp, the son, who's been lumbered onto his dad,
Yeah.
he just instantly falls in love with the main prostitute.
Oh yeah.
And starts telling... But at the same time, he's also... What would you say? He's... making fun of her almost. He makes fun of the amount of men that she must have slept with, etc. And yet, he also acts jealous from the moment that she mentions that she's a prostitute. Like, oh, you must have had a lot of fun sleeping with a lot of men.
Yeah, which throughout that whole thing, their relationship is him wanting to save her and her saying, I don't need to be saved.
I'm not sure if that's supposed to be a strong woman angle. Is that what it's supposed to be? I'm a strong woman prostitute.
I don't know. Again, because the dubbing, there was no sense of the emotions, it's hard to tell, because it could be a few different things if there's that much nuance.
I'm trying to think what were the highlights for you then, seeing as you said you enjoyed this movie. What did you enjoy about it?
I enjoyed the hilarity of like, what the hell is going on?
All I enjoyed was the dubbing. I was laughing throughout this whole movie because it's impossible to take seriously. So whoever's decided to dub the movie, like whether it's the producers, distribution company, whoever's decided to dub it, it was a bad choice. Just go with the native tongue and put in subtitles.
Yeah. And it wasn't like terribly shot or anything like that. I thought it was
rather dull though. All the settings were pretty dull.
Maybe the dubbing saved
it was slow moving. There is also, again, this is listed as horror. I don't recall much, if any, horror. Okay, someone gets run over by a larder. If you don't know what a larder is, it's a kind of a comical car which is manufactured in Eastern Europe.
No, it's definitely not horror. There's maybe thriller elements to it.
I wouldn't even call it thriller.
I don't know, with the whole like gangster story and stuff, I don't know really. But, yeah, okay. It was possibly then, just after discussing it again, saved by...
So let's get into what we always
dubbing.
get into, what we always seem to get into every week, the sex scene. Now, the sex scene in this movie, the son who's been dropped off to his dad...
The 30-year-old man.
Yeah, the 30-year-old man who's been dropped off to his dad to be looked after. Once the hunchback pimp finds out that he fancies the main prostitute, they're having a bonfire and a party, and the hunchback man marries the two of them, like in a fake ceremony.
You keep saying the hunchback man. I don't remember any hunchbacks.
You're the one that pointed out his hunchback to me.
Did I?
Yeah, you've really forgotten a lot about this movie, haven't you? So then the 30-year-old man baby and the main prostitute go into a barn to make love, but they also another prostitute just comes with them, and she doesn't join in the sexual act, so to speak, but she's just being...
No, she does. She is... I'm pretty sure she's fingering the main prostitute.
Fingering!
Whilst he's also having sex. So
that wasn't clear to me. To me, it just looked like she was being squashed by the two people.
No, I
having
thought it was
sex,
pretty clear because again, the whole thing,
clear.
she's like, "Oh,
nothing in this movie was clear.
I've never had an orgasm. Can you give me that gift?" And so the prostitute and the guy were both trying to give the other prostitute an orgasm for the first time.
And it didn't work.
No.
Is there much more to mention about
No,
this
I
film?
think that pretty much covers it.
There was, and also about the dubbing. This movie is dialogue heavy, so having it all dubbed and having so much dialogue was just a completely bad choice. Mainly dialogue, shouldn't have been. Next, do you want to talk about your second favourite?
Yeah.
Being Prom Night 3.
Prom Night 3. And I should also disclose that I have never seen Prom Night 1 or 2. I have very little knowledge about it, although apparently we've had a remake of Prom Night on as a sleepy, something just go to sleep to, so I've seen some of that.
Yeah, I've seen the original Prom Night with Jamie Lee Curtis. Didn't really like it, so I didn't bother checking out number 2 and number 3. I'd also seen the remake. Also seen the remake, didn't like that too much, so yeah, it took a long time to get to, well, I haven't even seen number 2 yet, went straight to number 3. And
well,
yeah,
no,
like you say, this
2.
definitely had an Amityville effect. I didn't enjoy the one which is the original, and which is kind of lauded somewhat. So avoided it, and come to realise that once you just get a few movies in, it's turned into absolute gold.
See, you once accused me of being one of those people that just likes the dumb sequels to stuff, but clearly you're not immune to this.
Liking the sequels to Prom Night more than the original is different to liking Psycho 3 and 4 better than Psycho.
I never said I like them better.
You've absolutely said that.
Anyway, Prom Night 3, I didn't realise it was supposed to be full-on comedy at the start. So the very first shot, you find out later, you're supposed to be in hell. And you see these ladies' legs doing like a
opening dance sequence,
small can type thing whilst chained in this smoky area.
Were they supposed to be cheerleaders or something?
I think they're just all the women who are in hell, and they all have to just, dance for the devil or something.
This was a great movie. I loved all of the lighting of the building of the school from the outside. It was brilliantly done. All the camera work was really good. Someone gets electrocuted by a jukebox. There's lots of really fun kills. I really loved Mary Lou as the evil antagonist. So much to love. I've got a lot to get through this
very
movie.
Confused though, because I didn't realise. I would have assumed, being the victim of, being a victim, that she would have been in heaven, but this girl's in hell already, and then she comes back and starts just murdering people willy-nilly for a random guy that she has only really chosen because he just so happened to be the only human being in the school building at the moment that she was sort of floating about the halls.
The guy she chooses is a guy called Alex, and he's like, a middling student at high school.
He's supposed to be just average everything. Everything about his life is average.
He's on the bench for the football team as well. So much so that the quarterback of the football team comes up to him at the beginning of the movie and says, "Get comfortable, Alex. You'll always be second string." It's one of those kind of movies with those excellent lines.
Yeah, it was.
But Andrew,
very funny.
He gets his ass handed to him, so to speak, because Alex gets on the field and he gets overtaken by Mary Lou's powers, and she gives him super football powers, and he makes a touchdown. But what I noticed was, as Alex was running off after making this touchdown, he can't run very fast or very well. So I was just looking at how unrealistic it was that this guy, even with powers, looks like he can't even run, half a mile without falling over his own feet.
Yeah, as you mentioned, I'll touch on that again, because there were a lot of kills and they were all different, and the one-liners were brilliant. Mary Lou's character was very funny. Just like, I said once that Chucky was my favourite villain because I find him hilarious, and Mary Lou did a very good job.
This reminded me a lot of last week's movie, Serpent's Lair.
Did it?
Yeah, in many ways, like Mary Lou just won't give up on Alex no matter what. So
yeah, that's true.
She keeps like enticing Alex, whether she's dressed in a nurse's uniform and doing a sexy dance, or whether she's a woman in a diner handing out ice cream. She turns up and makes Alex essentially have sex with her, but then in between all this, after he's done having sex with her, there'll just be dead bodies all over the place of people that she's decided to kill, and Alex has to get rid of all the dead bodies. And at the same time, he's also got a girlfriend called Sarah who he's neglecting because he keeps getting haunted by the ghost of Mary Lou. The best thing about the sex scenes was Alex is wanting to get into medical school, something like this, or he's just had a science lesson, something. I wasn't really paying mad attention to this stupid movie. But Mary Lou comes and seduces him at one point, and I think it's when she's the nurse, knowing that he wants to be a doctor, and she gets on top of him, and as she inserts him, she says, the doctor is in. That's at that point, that's why I knew how much I loved this movie. The doctor is in that, and that can be directly compared to the City Lions in Serpent's Lair.
I guess that actually explains why you were laughing so much harder at this movie, because...
I couldn't believe how little you were laughing. I was laughing at literally everything in this movie, and seeing how horror comedy is not one of my favourite genres, it's very rare that I find the mashup works, but this one, for its time, for the type of horror movie that it is, was just absolutely perfect.
Oh, hang on though, did I see this was released in 1990?
1990.
Because it looked way older than that.
Well, obviously they would have no budget whatsoever, so they would have the worst lens. If you notice, when they go outside in the daytime filming the football scenes, the clarity of picture is just absolutely atrocious. And
I noticed.
Feels like it's been made on home video or something.
It
and
just felt like
conversely,
it was early 80s.
When they show the nighttime scenes, and again, it's done on probably the same camera and the same lens, but for the nighttime scenes, I think it really works. It looks really grimy, looks really grainy, and I love all that kind of thing.
Well, it's like I said, it reminds me of sort of some of those early 80s looking film and TV shows. So yeah, when I saw on IMDb that it was 1990, I was quite surprised.
Being that this isn't mostly a comedic movie, there are some really good kills in this. So when Mary Lou turns up as a diner worker, and she's about to off one of the professors, and the professor starts walking towards her little stand where she's selling ice cream. She hands out 2 ice creams towards the professor, but then she slams them down into his hand, and it turns out they're really sharp cones. So he's there trapped by 2 ice cream cones.
They've pierced his hands into the top of
and then she comes at him with a blender.
Yeah. Blenders in stuff always
a
make
mixer,
me
should I say, not a blender. It's a mixer.
Yeah, but
it's
it was
like a
sharp.
batter mixer, and it goes through the back of his head.
Gross.
That's excellent. Yeah. And one of the other people that she kills, for some reason, I can't quite remember.
Oh, we have to stop now. There's
an ice cream man. Ice cream!
Kidding, carry on.
For some reason, she covers the dead body in a banana split. So he has whipped cream, bananas, and American flags all over him. And later on, the police are investigating this murder, and the police chief is outside, he's being filled in, and he sends off his little deputy to go and find out what's happened. And when the deputy comes back to fill him in with what he's found, he says, well, we found the dead body covered in fruit. And the chief officer goes, fruit? And the gopher says, yeah, cherries, bananas, fruit. Just excellent stuff.
Yeah, that maybe didn't sell it, but yeah, that was a really funny part.
You suck, Chloe, I'm stuck with this. So what did you like about this movie?
Which one? We still on...
Prom Night.
Prom Night 3. I feel like we've kind of covered it. I liked the kills. I liked that it was funny, even though it was unexpected. It took me a second to get into it. And the performances were good. It was just kind of a feel-good horror flick, wasn't it?
Feel good?
Feel good.
So I've got specific parts. So, as I mentioned, Mary Lou gives Alex powers so he's good on the football field. And it doesn't just end there. She also does his homework for him, does his exams for him, and he ends up going to the top of the honour roll. And he goes home and tells his dad, and obviously his dad is very proud of him. So as a reward, Alex's dad gives him a Harley Davidson, or a motorbike at least.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden Alex goes from like the regular guy to kind of predicting Arnold Schwarzenegger's look in Terminator 2, because he comes out in all his leathers, he's got his hair slicked back, he's got a pair of really dark sunglasses on, and he's sitting on the bike, and then his dad's in the garage with him. Alex walks in, his dad's in the garage, and he's like, hey son, I've noticed you've been a bit down recently, as he sits on his motorbike, dressed as Arnie from Terminator 2.
Yeah,
and he's like, no dad, it's just like girl problems. And his dad says, I know what the problem is. You've been dating multiple women, right? And he's like, how did you know, Dad? And then his dad goes into a whole thing about, well, son, when I was young, I was very popular with the women. And at this time, when he's saying all this, he's like cleaning a shotgun. And as the dad gets further and further into his sexual history, because becomes more and more frustrated, and ends up like shooting the gun even though it's not loaded.
Yeah, it was done really well.
You also absolutely loved Alex's best friend in the movie, So to the point where when Alex's best friend dies, you reacted and like, oh no, they've killed him off. His name was Shane. And before you mentioned that, I'd written in my notes that, oh, Shane is a really good best friend in this movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, even I was bummed out when he died. But
Yeah, I
then
couldn't believe it.
I was happy to see him come back at the end when they're in hell, or Mary Lou's hell, which is the prom.
Yeah.
And personally, I absolutely loved their version of the hell of Mary Lou.
Yeah, again, I think it fit everything perfectly that come before it, and the whole movie just kind of got better as it went along. And maybe that was just because I wasn't sure what to expect when we started, and it wasn't at all what I would have thought. But...
There's also other great elements where Sarah, who's Alex's girlfriend, she ends up going to the prom with the nerd of the movie called Leonard, and he has his whole schedule about how he's going to make 7 minutes of free time for her in between everything else that they have to do. And as their prom date evolves, you know, he's running by Sarah the list of things that they still need to do and how much time they're going to get now and how much time they've made.
Yeah, and then at one point she obviously takes the list, rips it up, and she takes them onto the dance floor, and then that might be one of my favourite
Leonard's
moments.
dance scene.
Leonard starts dancing. It is fantastic.
If for any reason you want to see Prom Night 3, it's for Leonard's dance sequence.
It's brilliant.
It's absolutely
I don't
out
think
of
it's
this
that
world.
easy to sell those. Like, there's only a few actors who I've seen do that kind of, you know, do a dumb dance that makes people laugh and that actually works.
Yeah.
And that was definitely one of them.
Leonard absolutely, he gets done in the end by schedules because Mary Lou turns up with her own schedule, and on her list, Leonard is due to die, and he's offed.
Yeah, right on schedule, I might add.
Absolutely right on schedule. At least he can take
Very
that to
fitting.
the grave.
Yeah.
So earlier on I've mentioned you get death by jukebox in this movie, death by ice cream and mixer. You also get battery acid to the face. And you also get Mary Lou throws Andrew, the jock, a football, and as it's moving through the air, it turns into like a drill. And the football drill goes through Andrew and nails him to the goalposts. So you get really cool death scenes, really great comedy. The main guy who plays Alex, not even halfway through, just within 5 or 10 minutes, I was recognising this guy, all of his mannerisms and stuff, even though...
Oh, yeah.
And it turns out he was in one episode of a TV show that we watched called Rules of Engagement. And his name is Tim Conlon. And he has exactly the same mannerisms in 1990 as what he does in this, you know, TV show from 2010.
Yeah, you were saying.
He's almost given the same performance, except he's young in this one and he's older in Rules of Engagement, but he totally works for it. Everyone works for their role.
Yeah.
What's going to be interesting is the Mary Lou in Prom Night 2 is a different actress from one in number 3, so we have a direct comparison.
Interesting.
Yeah, so we're going to go back to number 2. We have number 2 to watch. I just don't see it. And also number 2 is the highest rated one, even rated better than the first one, which is a more serious movie.
Is number 2 also supposed to be comedic? Because that was the best thing
I'm
about
not sure
the
it's supposed to be as it's actually written by the same guy that wrote number 3.
Okay.
So, but I think the guy that wrote 2 and 3 also directed number 3.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sure he did number 2, but he did a great job.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did an absolutely fantastic job on this movie.
Killer.
I'd watch this again and again.
Yeah, I know
Prom
you
Night
would.
3
I'll watch
rules.
it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As well as entertainment, this movie has a strong message. It warns against bad dietary habits, rock music, and too many horror movies, and how it can warp your little mind.
We have the evidence right there.
Yes. So now we've finally got to my number 2 pick and your number 1 pick, The Fanatic.
Oh my god, this movie. There was not a second where I was not entertained. And John Travolta's performance is a huge part of that. I have so many questions about this film that will never be answered.
Let's start at the beginning. As you've mentioned, John Travolta is the star, the lead of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
The director is the one and only Limp Bizkit frontman Fred Durst.
What? I didn't even know that.
Did you not notice that come up? Well, it obviously came up really bold in the titles at the beginning.
Yeah.
And I was just going to see if you said anything when it said Fred Durst there. It's written and directed by Fred Durst of Limp Bizkit fame, and I'll mention I am a lifelong fan of Limp Bizkit. I have everything they've done. I love Limp Bizkit. And to top it off, not only do we have John Travolta and Fred Durst, but the producer of this movie, again, when the name came up, I said it out loud in consternation, Bill Kenwright. He was the chairman of Everton Football Club. So how would you get the chairman of Everton Football Club together with the singer of Limp Bizkit, and then they get together with John Travolta? I don't know where this relationship began, how it began. It doesn't. It's like
I'm so glad it did.
sounds made up to me. So that's what we've got here. So Fred Durst is known for directing pretty much all of Limp Bizkit's videos. Does a pretty good job. He's also directed a movie before which I haven't seen.
Okay.
It stars the guy that plays Mark Zuckerberg in the Social Network movie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that guy. Again, I haven't seen this. So just the thought of having John Travolta, who is obviously, he's a cinema icon. Don't have to name it. Saturday Night Fever, Grease, Pulp Fiction. I love him in other stuff like the remake of Pelham 123, Be Cool. You love Be Cool. I love Get Shorty. Yeah, love him. This performance. Where do we begin with the performance?
It was fantastic. Now, I'm fairly sure that the character has been told that he has some kind of. Like, I'm not a psychologist. I don't know much about this stuff. But he has something because he keeps like shaking, which is a sign of like this stress, and as in like rocking back and forth, shaking.
Maybe autism.
Could be, like I said, I don't really know, but he's supposed to have some kind of psychological difference. I don't know. But then the way it's played, it's so unfathomable to see sort of where he's going with this character.
It was impossible for me to
I couldn't tell if he
to
was
make
making
sense
fun
of it because I had to ask. Well, not ask. You were convinced within about 15 minutes that this is a guy, who has like learning difficulties or something like that, and I wasn't sure. I just thought that John Travolta was just going off the chain, batshit crazy. And that's the thing. He hasn't been reined in at any point of this movie because he's just allowed to go off the rails, do whatever the hell he wants, and that is what makes it so entertaining. Do you remember what John Travolta's first line in this movie is?
No.
This movie is all over the place in terms of dialogue, tone, performances, what they're trying to get at. His first line, he walks into a shop, like that collectible shop, where he buys that leather jacket, and he says, "I can't talk too long, I gotta poo." That is our first introduction of John Travolta's character, telling us that he can't talk too long to the guy in the shop because he's got to take a deuce.
I wonder if...
And it just gets weirder from there.
It's such a difficult thing because it, like you said, you weren't sure. You thought for a while John Travolta was just doing his weird thing and having a laugh, but I think maybe it would have been easier to accept who the character is supposed to be if it had been an unknown actor.
Absolutely.
Because it's hard to see John Travolta doing that. Although I have to say I loved the way they styled him, like the hair and clothes. It all kind of worked really well.
If you feel like you'd like to see John Travolta in a mullet wig, a Hawaiian shirt, and a tiny backpack, this movie is for you.
Yeah.
This movie is definitely for you. So let's get into John. We barely even scratched the surface of this movie. So John Travolta's character Moose, he's a collector of like film memorabilia. He's really into movies and TV shows, and he's particularly into a guy called Hunter Dunbar, played by Devon Sawyer.
So I was going to ask, that's not a real... Okay, so it's made up celeb.
Devon Sawyer plays, a celeb called Hunter Dunbar. And throughout this movie, you can just see John Travolta saying the name Hunter Dunbar in different tones, different volume, just Hunter Dunbar, Hunter Dunbar, Hunter Dunbar, all throughout this movie. Devon Sawyer plays him. So John Travolta's Moose wants to meet Devon Sawyer's Hunter Dunbar because he's a fan, and he finally gets in line for him to sign his memorabilia, but Devon Sawyer's got to run off somewhere, so John Travolta follows him out, and then from then on, Hunter Dunbar's reaction to Moose is just unfathomable to me because he's just directly a prick from the first second. He's just a
Yeah.
complete arsehole. And conversely, he's a really good dad. So he's a good dad, but he's a complete arsehole to
Yeah.
people with clear learning difficulties at this point. And he was just a prick. I'm not sure what we were supposed to feel for him because I also didn't feel just sympathy for Moose because I felt like he was acting stupidly, like more stupid than anyone would act, no matter what kind of like difficulties I might be living with. It was just it was unrealistic everywhere. This isn't me tearing the movie down because, like you, this movie is just raw entertainment.
Oh, it was, yeah.
And normally I would steer clear of movies where someone who is less fortunate than others is treated like dirt by everyone around him because I just feel that's a really mean-spirited stuff. I can't take it.
But he wasn't because...
But hang on. And to the point where even in something more fictional like Frankenstein, it just makes me feel contempt for human nature and it makes me well up for the monster and I don't like feeling like that, so I always stay away. But this movie was so out there and it had just ridiculousness around it at all times. I could watch every scene just separately as, what the hell did I just see? What the hell was that? What was going on there?
Yeah, you especially, because you kept being like, oh, why is this girl doing this and that and that? He had some loyal people in his life who would do
that girl you
anything for
mentioned
him.
is a paparazzo.
Yeah.
And she was tipping him off about where people live and stuff. Essentially, I found it to be her just encouraging him to go and stalk these people, which she knew he would go and do because he doesn't have like a filter. So he half brings it on himself, and you must say he does bring it on himself because now.
But she does say in the voiceover, you hear her voice saying like, I guess it was my fault.
The
for
voiceover
doing
was
this."
just another tragic add-on to this movie. That was not a good voiceover whatsoever. It just added to the silliness of the movie.
I feel like I haven't been able to say much though because what I really liked about when you were saying about feeling sorry for this and that, I liked that it was slightly ambiguous, but that obviously, yeah, I think the sympathies are definitely supposed to lie with Moose because he just doesn't even understand that he's doing something wrong. But then you also understand that from the other person's point of view, if you just have this random guy turning up in your house, I mean, that would be so creepy. You have no idea what this guy's motivations are. So I like that it kind of explored both sides and it got just crazy what was happening. Like when he just decided to have a sleepover with Hunter Dunbar after he saw the actor take some sleeping pills and knew he was going to be like knocked out. He just kind of settles down, has some fun, they take some pictures.
You've missed a big thing before he even gets into the house. So he's already been warned away by Hunter Dunbar for hanging outside the house, but he turns up again and this time he's managed to break into his garden. So he's hanging out in the bushes. So John Travolta in his mullet wig just keeps popping out of the bushes, which is funny enough in itself.
And it's a wine shirt.
And it's Hawaiian shirt and his tiny, tiny backpack. And he's trying to give a letter over to Hunter Dunbar. And anyway, the letter gets away from him and the housemaid kind of finds this letter and she picks it up and starts looking at it in the garden. And this, it triggers Moose. So John Travolta as Moose runs out of the bushes and just punches the maid straight in the face and knocks her out.
And then she dies.
And then he lets himself into the house. And
yeah, that was another thing. After she died, I was like, how is nobody finding her body? This is not being mentioned.
This is a huge plot hole.
She's just gone.
It's a giant
and
plot
no
hole.
one notices.
But with this movie, I think you just got to let plot holes go by the wayside.
But then it comes back right at the end. But anyway, you were going to say something.
So the thing is, now let me be ultra clear. Violence against women is despicable, completely wrong on every single level. But again, the ridiculous of this movie, the way that he was just in the bushes, popping out now and again, and then he just comes out full pelt and punches the maid in the face. It reminded me of the remake of The Wicker Man, where Nick Cage is running around the forest in a bear suit and comes across a woman in the forest mid-running and just punches her in the face as he walks by. And this punch to the face of a lady is second only to Nick Cage in a bear suit punching a lady in The Wicker Man. So that's the first bit of him. So then he gets into the house and he hides under the kid's bed.
Yeah.
Then he waits for Hunter Dunbar to fall asleep. And when he's asleep, he's walking around the house and he's like hammering on a piano. He goes to his fridge, opens up the door and says, "And poor Hunter Dunbar, all this money and no ice cream."
Yeah,
and then just
with
shuts the door. And then you got him. He's brushing his teeth with Hunter Dunbar's toothbrush,
that
and
really
then
grossed you out.
and then he manically starts brushing his tongue like that, making all this noise. So it's incredibly hard to take seriously. He's also sniffing Hunter Dunbar's earlobes.
Oh yeah, he does this thingy to calm himself down or something. Basically, what we're saying is the fact that John Travolta, who's so known, as you mentioned, all his massive hits, then coming into a film like this and supposed to be a nobody with learning disabilities, is just so unbelievable. It would have been a completely different film had it been someone you could actually take seriously in that role.
Something about that, of all the scenes which you can't take seriously because it's so ridiculous, there were times though when there would be a scene of John Travolta and Devon Sawyer, and it would be a dead serious scene, and it was supposed to convey discomfort, all this kind of thing. And it had me and you. I noticed we were just looking at the television, and you would be able to hear a pin drop at that second because we were taken in by what they had achieved with just one tiny scene of seriousness. So, as bad as the movie is, it's not bad. It's just bad in certain ways, if you know what I mean. But it doesn't come together. There's different tones all over the place. And when it got dead serious, you can tell that everyone who's acting in it, and you can tell that Fred Durst can get the performances out, but it's just too batshit all over the place at different times, that when the super serious stuff comes, it just doesn't feel part of the movie almost.
It had some great bones, like some great aspects to it, and I actually really like the idea of this, helpless guy who idolizes someone, and all he wants is a signature.
Yeah.
And without him being a malicious person, it obviously spirals from there. And I like the interaction, because obviously there are loads of celebrities who are super nice, but there are also celebrities who are assholes. They're just part of the population, and part of the population is
the dress of
not so great.
the outfit of Moose is apparently inspired by someone that used to stalk Fred Durst, who was a huge Limp Bizkit fan. So it kind of gets to me that you didn't get the whole Fred Durst Limp Bizkit thing, because actually in the movie, Hunter Dunbar, Devon Sawyer, is driving his kid to school, and when they get in the car, Devon Sawyer's like, "Oh hey, I'm gonna play you some Limp Bizkit. I used to listen to this back 20 years ago," and he plays this song from, it's like literally the most obscure album / EP that Limp Bizkit ever released. So he's not like playing Rollin' or something like that, number one hits. And as he's driving along, when Limp Bizkit kicks in, I really liked it when Devon Sawyer just goes, "Nice."
Yeah, that was hilarious.
So yeah, I got to imagine just Fred Durst thinking, now how can I insert Limp Bizkit into my own movie? And that's the way that he's done it.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting, especially now that you let me know that it's him and that he had a stalk and it's based on that and stuff, because I think it shows a humanity to him, that it's not, like, if anything, you side more with Moose than you do with the actor. The actor is just an arsehole the whole time. And you can understand some of it, but it wouldn't have escalated if he'd just been a normal person from the start.
The Hunter Dunbar was a total arsehole, and then at the end, so towards the end, Moose has him tied up in his own house, and when he finally escapes, there's just this random moment of excessive violence. He shoots off Moose's fingers, and then did he plunge a knife into his eye?
Yeah, so what I understood from it was that he was trying to shoot him, like to kill him. The shots went just shy of him, and then he had no bullets left, so then he went and grabbed a knife and literally just stabbed him in the eye. And then, of course, next thing you know, Moose is just wandering down the road with his bloody eye and his severed fingers, and that's when his paparazzi friend kind of spots him and finds him.
The one that caused him all the trouble, in my opinion.
Yeah, and she kind of says, he wears it as a badge of honour now, so I guess he has a story. Oh, Hunter Dunbar did this and this. But yeah, again, it was like, it was, I understand obviously it's terrifying waking up tied up and all this, but then after that conversation, it seems pretty clear that he could have just, written a signature, gotten Moose out of the house, and then, called the police, because you don't want someone breaking into your house and tying you up.
There's just so much to this movie that I feel I just got to get out whatever comes into my head. So having already mentioned, if you want to see John Travolta in a mullet wig, Hawaiian shirt and tiny backpack, this movie is for you.
Who doesn't?
for all you horror fans out there, 'cause this is more of a suspense movie, really. But for all you true horror fans out there, if you want to see what it would have been like for John Travolta to play Jason Voorhees, then this movie is for you. And if you want to see what it would have looked like for John Travolta to play Mr. Blonde from Reservoir Dogs, then you got to check out this movie because you'll see all of that. I felt like I was hit over the head by a mallet by the end of this movie.
Yeah, I loved it.
I absolutely loved it. Do you know, it got absolutely ripped apart by critics. I can kind of understand that in a way, but it's been given like 13 out of 100 on Metascore.
Harsh.
Which is, yeah, this movie is way too entertaining to rate it that low. No matter if it doesn't kind of fit together.
The execution isn't
if
what
the
I think they
execution
imagined, which is also a shame because I think if it had been done right, it could also be a very good movie.
I feel like if I could have collaborated with Fred Durst and gone in and fine-tuned the writing of this movie
and swapped out John Travolta,
or just reined him in slightly, but
I don't know. If you're going for what they were going for, I think you just need an unknown actor or someone who actually has, you know.
It's not even about a known actor. It's, as I said, an icon of cinema. John Travolta, you know, he's the man.
Yeah.
Can't help but love a lot of John Travolta stuff. As I mentioned, big fan of Limp Bizkit. So this movie will get hate just because Fred Durst directed it as well. Also a big fan of Devon Sawyer, who is the lead in one of my all-time favourite horror movies of Final Destination. The first one, 10 out of 10 movie that is. And he plays Stan in the music video for Eminem's song called Stan, which is Eminem's song about an overzealous fan who constantly writes him and stalks him and says that he's going to hurt his girlfriend if Eminem doesn't respond to him and things like this. So yeah, there's all these things connecting the movie together. This movie, I'd watch it again 100%, and I think I'd find even more things in it that I would find richly entertaining.
And I feel like I definitely want to bring other people in to watch this movie just to get their reactions.
Yeah, because
it'd be a great group watch, I think.
In terms of a concept, I've seen it. It has like a bit of a misery thing to it, an overzealous fan who traps the object of their affection, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But the way that it was done, I haven't seen a movie like this.
No,
I've not seen a movie like
it's
this.
Pretty unique.
We were about to end, but I've just completely forgot. Again, it just keeps coming to me. John Travolta's character Moose is also a street performer.
Oh yeah.
In Los Angeles.
God, yeah,
He plays an English Bobby.
Yeah.
A police officer.
And you see him getting ready all the time. You see his day-to-day life, and he's doing his phrases, his British accent.
Poppycock, poppycock. He's just standing in a public toilet, dressed as an English police officer, saying "poppycock" to himself in the mirror.
Yeah, he's practicing his phrases so they sound English. Oh, it was brilliant. Oh, yeah, and then there's another street performer who's like some douchebag, and
yeah, he's an
there's
arsehole.
so many things. This is. I can't believe I'm about to say this. It's similar to Benedetta in that every second there was something going on. Completely different tone. But yeah, they're both
This movie is also for you if you want to see John Travolta dressed as an English Bobby saying, "I caught Jack the Ripper, I did," on the sidewalk. You can't go wrong. Check out The Fanatic.